You got a bunch of people there who love their job, and there's a responsibility in that, and there has been over a number of years. You work with these people every day, and it only works when people want to be there. And I'm proud of being there for 17 years, certainly.
The lights dimmed on Mark Harmon's iconic role. However, the real drama was just beginning. For decades, he was one of television's most respected and private stars.
I never for a second took that for granted, or I never thought that you can't do this without respecting the individual or the outfit that they work with. And now, maybe I have a bit of a chance to pay that back.
But now, devastating new details have left longtime fans stunned. Behind the quiet image he carefully maintained, troubling revelations and heartbreaking developments have raised serious questions about what was really happening away from the cameras. What really happened to Mark Harmon that the public never saw. The heartbreaking family war over custody. You probably may not have heard, but the crisis centered on his older sister, Kristen Harmon, whose life had once seemed a perfect Hollywood fairy tale. In 1963, she married the legendary music icon Ricky Nelson, joining one of the most celebrated entertainment families in America. However, the excessive lifestyle of the rock road took a devastating toll. During the marriage, Kristen gradually succumbed to a severe long-term battle with substance abuse. On top of that, her family environment collapsed completely after Ricky died in a tragic 1985 plane crash, leaving Kristen isolated and spiraling further into deep addiction. Now, caught directly in the crossfire of this domestic tragedy was her youngest son, Sam Nelson. At just 12 years old, Sam lived in a highly unstable and unsafe environment as his mother struggled to function. So, witnessing his nephew's safety rapidly deteriorate, Mark felt a profound moral obligation to act. He successfully convinced his sister to check into a rehabilitation clinic because she deeply trusted him. Knowing that long-term recovery takes time, Mark and his wife, Pam Dauber, made a monumental choice. In 1987, they filed a formal legal petition in court seeking custody of Sam, determined to provide the young boy with a safe, structured, and predictable home environment. But unfortunately, what was intended as a quiet rescue mission quickly transformed into an absolute media circus. Tabloid journalists caught wind of the courtroom trial and immediately splashed the family's darkest secrets across national headlines. The public arena was filled with painful revelations regarding substance dependency, psychiatric evaluations, and bitter accusations from both sides. Seeing this, Mark was deeply horrified to watch his family's private agony broadcast to millions of strangers. He realized the vicious legal warfare was actively traumatizing young Sam rather than protecting him. Tired of the destructive spectacle, Mark reached out to his sister's attorney and declared that too much blood had been spilled. He abruptly dropped the custody petition, agreeing to an out-of-court settlement that kept custody with Kristen while securing structured visiting rights for himself. Though the legal warfare ended, the permanent emotional scars remained. This intense custody battle created a deep, painful rift within the family that took several decades to even partially heal. The trust between the siblings was completely broken, leaving an enduring atmosphere of resentment that haunted family gatherings for a generation. Mark had to live with the heavy knowledge that his attempt to save his nephew had permanently fractured his relationship with his sister. This bruising public exposure forced Mark to build an impenetrable wall around his immediate household, leading to what became Hollywood's most protective marriage. The weight of a legendary name. Growing up in Burbank, California, you'd expect Mark Harmon to live in a normal neighborhood house, but no, he lived in the heavy, towering shadow of an American icon. His father, Tom Harmon, was a household name across the country. Tom won the prestigious Heisman Trophy in 1940, bravely flew as a decorated combat fighter pilot in World War II, and later became one of the most prominent sports broadcasters on network television. To the public, Tom was a larger-than-life hero. However, inside the family home, he was an incredibly strict disciplinarian who brought that same intense competitive pressure to his children. Mark once noted that his father raised him hard, meaning he had to fight for absolutely everything in life. This environment created a demanding household where flawless performance was the minimum expectation. Emotional vulnerability was not tolerated, and physical toughness became the standard daily rule. Mark and his older sisters quickly learned that standard parental affection often felt tied directly to their personal achievement. If you did not win, or if you did not perform perfectly, you felt the quiet weight of disappointing a national legend. This dynamic forced Mark to develop an intensely private, self-reliant personality at a very young age. He learned to keep his deepest feelings entirely to himself, building a stoic exterior to cope with the immense pressure of his family name. While his father demanded perfection, his mother, Elise Knox, brought a different kind of daily pressure. She was a successful 1940s film actress and fashion model who understood the fragile nature of public attention. Behind the clean, pristine image the family presented to the world, there were quiet anxieties about maintaining their perfect reputation. Mark watched his parents carefully manage their public lives, learning early on that the world outside was always watching and judging. This highly controlled childhood environment made him deeply skeptical of the superficial elite in Hollywood long before he ever considered an acting career. He saw firsthand that immense fame was a highly calculated performance, not a completely safe haven. And finding his own unique professional identity under these incredibly difficult conditions felt almost completely impossible for the young man. Every single step he took invited an immediate, unfair comparison to his father's massive athletic legacy. To escape this constant judgment, Mark sought out a clear path where he could prove his worth on his own terms. He realized that the only true way to earn respect in his family was through raw action, not empty words. But his grueling path to defining himself wouldn't begin on a Hollywood soundstage. It started on the brutal gridiron of college football, where a life-altering choice left permanent marks. Gridiron glory and the sacrifice of a dream. In 1972, Mark arrived at the University of California, Los Angeles, as a young junior college transfer facing massive skepticism. Immediately, he earned the high-pressure role of starting quarterback for the famous UCLA Bruins. Over 2 spectacular seasons, he ran a complex, highly dangerous strategy known as the wishbone offense. Mark directed this fast-paced system with absolute surgical precision, guiding his teammates to an impressive 17-5 record. His most legendary performance occurred during his very first game, when he orchestrated a stunning upset victory against the 2-time defending national champion Nebraska Cornhuskers. While thousands of roaring stadium fans cheered his name on crisp autumn Saturdays, Mark remained deeply focused on his academic responsibilities. He graduated cum laude with a strong grade point average in communications, winning the honored National Football Foundation National Scholar Athlete Award in 1973. This exceptional milestone proved to his demanding family that his sharp intellect fully matched his relentless physical drive. However, achieving this high level of greatness required a painful bodily sacrifice. During this period, he endured crushing hits, severe joint trauma, and torn tissue every single week. And because of his quiet upbringing, Mark pushed through this intense physical damage without a single word of complaint, establishing a lifelong high pain tolerance. When his college days ended, everyone, including the professional sports world, naturally expected him to enter the professional football draft. Instead, he shocked talent scouts and sports writers by turning down lucrative athletic contracts to chase acting entirely. Mark chose to leave a secure football path because he refused to let his father's massive legacy dictate his destiny. This bold gamble sent the celebrated stadium hero from the bright lights of competitive sports directly into the cold reality of Hollywood casting rooms. To survive the lean years, he worked long hours as a common neighborhood carpenter and roofer, lifting heavy wooden beams by day while handling constant acting rejections by night. Realistically, this frustrating career change would have easily broken standard actors, but Mark effectively used his rigid sports background as a defensive shield. The structured, team-first philosophy he mastered on the football field became his primary survival mechanism against the chaotic, superficial nature of celebrity culture. He approached Hollywood sets like a practice field, always showing up early, respecting the crew, and staying completely humble. He chose to treat every casting call as an intense athletic drill that demanded total focus. While he was quietly rebuilding his life outside of sports, a horrific, real-world emergency right outside his front door forced him to put his life completely on the line. The 1996 Fiery Rescue. On a chilly evening in January 1996, the peaceful quiet of his Brentwood neighborhood shattered instantly. A speeding vehicle carrying two teenage boys lost control, violently slamming into a brick wall before flipping completely upside down and bursting into massive flames. The driver miraculously managed to scramble out of the wreckage with minor injuries, leaving his 16-year-old passenger, Colin Specht, tightly pinned upside down inside a crumpled metal cage that was rapidly filling with thick, toxic smoke and roaring fire. As this occurred, nearby onlookers stood completely paralyzed by fear, terrified that the vehicle would explode at any second. Fortunately, Mark's wife, Pam Dauber, spotted the burning vehicle from their home and immediately shouted for help while dialing emergency services. However, Mark did not wait for the fire department to arrive on the scene. Acting on pure survival instinct, he ran straight to his dark garage, gripped a heavy 12-pound sledgehammer, and raced toward the intense heat without a single piece of protective clothing or gear. He approached the blazing car, raised the heavy tool, and systematically shattered the passenger side window to create an immediate escape route. Reaching directly into the growing flames, he grabbed the pinned teenager and forcefully ripped him out of the tight seatbelt, dragging his burning body across the hard pavement to safety, only moments before the entire passenger cabin became a total fireball. Terrified neighbors quickly rolled the young man in the street to extinguish his flaming clothing. In the days that followed this dramatic rescue, the competitive entertainment industry fully expected the actor to exploit this unbelievable act of bravery for massive personal publicity. Instead, Mark completely rejected the frantic media spotlight. He intentionally dodged major late-night talk shows, refused sensational network news interviews, and firmly demanded that reporters focus on the intense medical recovery of the injured teenagers rather than his personal actions. He later admitted that he hated taking credit for the rescue, honestly acknowledging that if the vehicle had exploded, his own wife and young children would be mourning a tragic loss. This terrifying event left a lasting psychological weight on his mind, providing an unforgettable reminder of how quickly life can change. Also, witnessing such raw trauma up close left an indelible mark on his perspective, making him value the absolute sanctity of safety and privacy more than ever before. But while Mark Harmon possessed the rare courage to save total strangers from a burning car, he was entirely powerless to save his own family from a destructive internal collapse. Protecting the sanctuary. The cost of a 39-year privacy pact. Well, the painful fallout from that public courtroom battle taught Mark Harmon a permanent lesson about the extreme dangers of Hollywood exposure. Seeking a completely safe haven away from the invasive media, he formed a remarkably tight alliance with fellow television superstar Pam Dauber. The couple got married in a quiet, incredibly private ceremony in March 1987, establishing an unbreakable mutual vow to isolate their personal lives from the public eye. At that time, Pam was widely famous for her leading role in the classic hit comedy series Mork and Mindy. Despite standing at the absolute peak of her acting career, she made a profound personal choice to walk away from the entertainment industry to raise their two sons, Sean and Ty. She realized that maintaining a healthy, lasting marriage while both parents worked under the intense Hollywood spotlight was virtually impossible. To protect their home sanctuary, Mark and Pam enforced strict rules of engagement that completely baffled industry public relations experts. They made a firm commitment to never discuss each other or their home life during promotional press interviews. They refused to allow their young boys to pose for family photos on Hollywood red carpets, effectively shielding them from predatory paparazzi photographers. As the internet grew, the family maintained a complete ban on personal social media accounts, ensuring they left zero digital footprint for curious strangers to follow. This total media blackout became their greatest defensive weapon against a deeply invasive celebrity culture. For nearly 4 decades, this total blackout strategy allowed the couple to weather endless tabloid storms that easily destroy typical celebrity relationships. Whenever gossip magazines manufactured desperate stories about impending divorces or hidden medical scares, Mark and Pam responded with total silence. They discovered that refusing to feed the media monster caused the false rumors to fade away safely. This extreme level of isolation required a substantial professional sacrifice. By intentionally avoiding elite Hollywood parties and networking events, they lived as high-profile recluses, cutting themselves off from industry connections that could have advanced their careers. Ultimately, this uncompromising boundary provided their sons with a beautifully normal, grounded childhood away from toxic fame. Their 39-year marriage remains a true masterclass in longevity within an industry defined by broken homes. They proved that a celebrity family can survive if they treat their privacy as a non-negotiable treasure. Though he avoided Hollywood parties and successfully protected his family, it couldn't shield Mark from the grueling, high-pressure machine that would soon dominate his life. NCIS. The toxic set of NCIS and the Pauley Perrette feud. You know, stepping into the iconic role of Special Agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs meant carrying a massive professional weight. Also, producing 24 episodes every year for the world's most-watched television drama quickly became a relentless, exhausting grind. And Mark Harmon, being the central star and an executive producer, means the financial success of a multi-billion-dollar franchise rested directly on his shoulders. This grueling schedule turned the television studio into a high-stakes backstage pressure cooker. Working 16-hour days for months on end pushed the cast and crew to the edge of physical exhaustion, causing tempers to flare and creating intense friction behind the scenes. The dangerous boiling point arrived in October 2016 due to an unexpected workplace incident involving Mark's rescue dog. The animal had been a regular presence on the dog-friendly set for years, without any issues. On this particular day, a crew member handling cue cards was playfully roughhousing with the dog when a nearby lighting rig shifted. The sudden noise spooked the animal, causing it to bite the crew member's face, a serious injury that required 15 stitches. While the injured worker held no grudge and admitted to playing too rough, co-star Pauley Perrette was deeply outraged. She fiercely objected to the animal ever returning to the workplace, viewing its presence as a clear safety violation. However, Mark chose to defend his pet, creating an immediate, unfixable divide between the two main stars. And because Mark held immense power as an executive producer, the network provided strong institutional protection to keep their bankable hit afloat. Studio executives arranged a highly unusual, completely fragmented production schedule so the two feuding actors never had to stand in the same location. The crew split the filming days in half, meaning Pauley filmed her scenes on specific days, while Mark worked on entirely separate days. The technical magic of modern television editing and split-screen compositing was used during her final season to make viewers believe the characters were interacting, even though the actors never shared the same room. This hidden Cold War erupted into the public eye after Pauley permanently left the series. She posted explosive messages on social media, shocking the fan base by alleging multiple physical assaults on set. She later explicitly named Mark, claiming he forcefully body-checked her in an attempt to intimidate her after the dog fiasco. True to his private nature, Mark chose to handle this painful crisis with absolute silence, refusing to fight back in the press. Nevertheless, the heavy controversy caused profound emotional stress, temporarily clouding his pristine reputation as Hollywood's ultimate good guy. As the backstage Cold War raged on, Mark's aging body began sending severe, unavoidable warning signs that his time in the field was running out. Physical burnout and leaving the CBS empire. For nearly 2 decades, the dedicated actor had treated the television studio like an athletic training camp, routinely pushing himself through grueling 16-hour workdays. Even as he entered his late 60s, Mark Harmon completely refused to slow his frantic pace. He frequently ignored direct warnings from his doctors, who advised him that his intense routine was no longer sustainable. His bright athletic discipline, forged during his early college football days, had taught him to always block out physical pain. Yet this stubborn mentality was rapidly catching up to him. The heavy physical toll became completely undeniable to television viewers around the world during the later seasons of the show. Fans began noticing a stark, sudden drop in Mark's weight, along with an increasingly frail and exhausted appearance on camera. This alarming transformation instantly ignited a massive wave of frantic internet speculation, with thousands of worried viewers spreading false rumors that the actor was quietly battling a terminal illness. The true medical reality was far less scandalous. Mark was experiencing severe physical exhaustion, combined with the slow, painful recovery from a major knee surgery. Decades of heavy sports collisions and standing on hard studio floors had worn down his joints, leaving him in constant, agonizing discomfort. This health crisis created immense panic inside the corporate offices of CBS. High-level network executives were fully aware that their multi-million-dollar television empire heavily relied on the presence of Leroy Jethro Gibbs. They repeatedly approached Mark, begging him to sign new contracts to keep the franchise afloat. This placed a heavy moral dilemma on his shoulders. Mark knew that if he walked away from the production, hundreds of hard-working crew members and production staff would instantly lose their jobs. His deep sense of loyalty to these workers forced him to keep pushing his aching body forward long after he desperately wanted to quit. The inevitable breaking point finally arrived during the 4th episode of Season 19 in 2021. Realizing his physical survival depended on a complete lifestyle change, Mark coordinated an understated, quiet exit from the series. The writers crafted a low-key storyline where Gibbs travels to the remote wilderness of Alaska, tracking down a dangerous hitman before ultimately deciding to remain there to find a deep sense of peace. The final emotional scene showed him contentedly fishing in serene waters, officially handing over his iconic badge. However, stepping away from the cameras didn't stop the march of time, and Mark was soon forced to confront a wave of deeply personal grief that shook the foundation of his remaining inner circle. Grief behind the scenes. In September 2016, the first devastating blow occurred behind the scenes of NCIS. Gary Glassberg, the brilliant showrunner and visionary leader of NCIS, passed away suddenly in his sleep at the age of 50. You see, Gary was not merely a boss to Mark. He was a close creative partner and a trusted confidant who shared the massive burden of running television's biggest hit. They spent thousands of hours in production meetings, shaping characters and mapping out scripts. This unexpected tragedy deeply rattled Mark's professional world, leaving an empty chair in the writer's room that could never truly be filled. 7 years later, an even more profound heartbreak arrived. In late 2023, the production family suffered the painful loss of legendary Scottish actor David McCallum, who spent 2 decades portraying the beloved medical examiner Dr. Donald "Ducky" Mallard. David passed away peacefully at 90 years old, marking the official end of an era for millions of loyal fans. For Mark, David was a towering figure of wisdom, stability, and artistic excellence on set. He had spent years standing directly opposite the veteran performer, sharing a quiet bond built on mutual respect and shared professional discipline. Watching this remarkable friend and the original guard of his closest artistic confidants gradually fade away brought a heavy emotional weight. Faced with this heavy sorrow, Mark remained entirely consistent with his fiercely private nature. While modern Hollywood expects celebrities to deliver immediate, dramatic tributes across social media networks, Mark completely avoided hollow public statements and emotional press tours. He chose to process this immense grief away from flashing cameras, offering only a brief, dignified message expressing that he was in absolute awe of David from the first day they met. This choice to grieve quietly in private allowed him to honor his friends without converting their memory into temporary internet content. These consecutive losses naturally caused him to look closely at his own path and mortality. Witnessing his closest peers pass away reinforced a growing desire to step away from public demands entirely. He shifted his entire focus toward protecting his remaining years, vowing to devote his energy strictly to family, legacy, and his small inner circle. He sought the quiet safety of his home, feeling content with the history he had already written. And just when the world assumed Mark Harmon had permanently retired into the California shadows, a surprising twist pulled him right back into the NCIS universe. The 2026 Legacy Transition, NCIS Origins. In 2024, an unexpected twist arrived when CBS greenlit a prequel series titled NCIS Origins. Now, instead of strapping on a prop badge, Mark Harmon took a seat in the recording booth as the narrator and stepped behind the scenes as an executive producer. But then, this concept did not originate from a boardroom of network executives. It came from Mark's own son, Sean Harmon, who had previously played a younger version of the character in flashbacks. Sean envisioned a deeper look into the formative years of the legendary agent. Together, the father and son team pitched the project, transforming a massive television franchise into a tight family business. For Mark, this meant operating in a modern entertainment landscape where streaming required a completely different style of executive control. However, finding an actor capable of filling those iconic boots meant navigating a grueling, high-stakes casting process. Fortunately, the production team eventually selected Austin Stowell to carry the immense weight of the role. You see, Mark did not merely hand over the character. He provided direct personal mentorship, spending hours helping the young actor master the distinct cadence and subtle physical traits that millions of viewers had watched for 2 decades. Stowell noted that learning from the source felt like a masterclass in psychological realism. It was a crucial handoff because this new iteration of the character required a totally different approach than the seasoned leader fans already knew. This series forced Mark to dissect the raw trauma that originally forged the character. Set in 1991 at Camp Pendleton, the story explores a dark, grief-filled period immediately following the death of the agent's wife and daughter. So, revisiting this foundational pain meant pulling back the layers on a broken man who was dangerously close to destroying himself. For 20 years, Mark portrayed the stoic results of that tragedy, and working behind the scenes, he had to guide a new actor through the open wounds of the past. The process was emotionally complex, requiring Mark to confront the deep psychological scars of his old character from the quiet safety of a production office. Wielding authority from behind the camera offered a fresh perspective on the universe he helped build. Mark adapted smoothly to this new era of television, orchestrating creative choices without enduring the exhausting daily schedule of a network-leading man. With the prequel series successfully securing a 3rd season by 2026, the strategy proved remarkably effective. With his family legacy safely cemented in the hands of the next generation, we must finally confront the true lasting cost of being Mark Harmon. The true cost of silence. For decades, the public saw a monumental hero on their television screens, a man who seemed to embody classic American strength. Yet behind that famous smile was a deeply guarded heart that he protected fiercely. The entertainment industry knew him as a massive star, though the reality is that he lived a complex double life. He gave everything to his fictional characters while keeping his true identity completely hidden from the outside world. He became an institution on television, but the person underneath remained a total mystery to the public. And choosing that level of extreme privacy came with a heavy emotional price. Whenever rumors or scandals hit the media, he made a strategic choice to never publicly defend himself. He refused to release angry statements or fight back in the press, relying purely on the truth of his actions to speak for him. This complete silence often meant letting false stories circulate without any correction. forcing him to carry the weight of public misconceptions completely alone. It was a lonely path to walk, but it was the only way he knew to keep the modern media storm away from his home. You know, navigating the traps of show business requires an incredible amount of personal control. His rigid discipline and absolute refusal to play the usual fame game kept his soul intact through decades of intense scrutiny. He intentionally skipped the typical red carpets and the standard networking circles that define mainstream Hollywood. Though this strict boundary kept his personal life grounded, it also isolated him from major industry power circles. While Mark Harmon stepped away from his iconic on-screen role as Special Agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs on NCIS in 2021, he didn't head straight for a quiet retirement. Instead, he stepped back from the grueling schedule of full-time acting and pivoted into becoming a published historical author. To fulfill his purpose as a writer, Mark teamed up with Leon Carroll Jr., a retired real-life NCIS special agent who served as the longtime technical advisor for the TV show. Together, they channeled their shared passion for naval history into writing a highly successful true crime and military history book series. His books like Ghosts of Honolulu, written in 2023, Ghosts of Panama, written in 2024, and Ghosts of Sicily, written in 2026, focus on the high-stakes, untold stories of real naval intelligence agents. Outside of his book tours and production meetings, Harmon has finally been able to fully enjoy the fiercely guarded privacy he fought for throughout his career. He spends the vast majority of his time completely out of the Hollywood spotlight, living quietly with his wife of nearly 40 years, Pam Dauber, and being a proud grandfather who enjoys a simple private life. Ultimately, his greatest victories were never achieved on a television screen. They happened behind closed doors, where he spent a lifetime protecting the people he loved most. Mark Harmon's journey shows us that even Hollywood's strongest icons carry hidden burdens. What part of his untold story touched you the most? Share your thoughts down below. Don't forget to smash the like button, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more content like this, click on the next video on your screen.